Hello crafty friends, Shana from ShanoukiArt. These are art journals that you can make, and you can make them for free. All you need is a free magazine and a few items from your craft desk. This is a free magazine that I got from my local supermarket. I have already torn out some pages that I've used from other projects, but that's okay. And this is an old catalog that I received for free at a paper expo that I went to a few years ago. I don't need this anymore, but I can definitely recycle it. There are many videos out there showing how to make magazines into journals. This is just one way. You can change it up and make it your own. I'm going to start by finding the center of my magazine. And then working with the pages on the right, I'm going to fold each page inwards towards the center of the magazine. I'm not going to put the edge of my page exactly in the center fold. I'm going to leave a couple of millimeters between the center fold and the edge of my page. This will allow the pages to turn easier. I'm going to proceed and do this to all the pages until I get to the back cover. And then when I fold my back cover, I'm going to leave about 1 centimeter between the edge of the cover and where the center fold is or the spine is. This will allow the cover to be slightly larger than the actual pages. If you want it flush with your pages, of course, you can then just fold it in closer to the spine. This is all personal preference. I'm loving the way this looks already. I'm going to do exactly the same with that catalog. I really love the paper that they've used for this catalog, and I think it's going to make a really good art journal. The paper is slightly thicker than your regular copy paper. It's probably about 100 or maybe 120 GSM. And since we're using it sort of double because we're folding it in half, it's nice and sturdy. I also like the fact that because this is a catalog, you've got the pictures of different images, maybe of their die cuts or their stamps, and some of that is going to shine through in the background of the art journaling spread. It'll make it very interesting. The next part is a little tricky, but really worth the end result. We need to cut this magazine in half. I've measured the center point using my ruler and a marker. I'm using the grid on my cutting mat to help me align my magazine, and then I'm going to place my metal ruler down, and I'm going to use a box cutter to cut this in half. Now, it's not going to cut in the first go. Of course, you need to be really, really careful so you don't slice any fingers. You will need a metal ruler, and you will need to take your time and be very careful. Of course, if you have a guillotine, that would work great. I don't have one, unfortunately, so I'm going with this method. I didn't realize at this point that the blade on my box cutter was really blunt. It has multiple blades, and you can just snap off the top blade and you get the next one, because I'd used this for cutting some boxes in my garage. Totally forgotten. So I'm slicing and slicing, and it wasn't really cutting through really well, and some of the paper was tearing slightly. Eventually, I did realize that I should maybe snap off that first blade to give me a nice, fresh, sharp one. At this point, I've thought I will turn it over and try from the other side. This was Struggle Street. It really shouldn't be this difficult. I leave all this content in, even the bad stuff that doesn't work out, so you can hopefully learn from my mistakes. A bit delayed, but I snapped off that top blade. I just used my pliers to snap it off. I've now got a nice fresh new point and a couple of slices, and there you go. Much easier than my original struggle. So do make sure you have a nice sharp blade. You'll see now when I cut this one in half with my new blade how easy it really is. You don't have to cut it in half. You can cut it sort of a third way down and have one small journal and one larger one. It really is up to you. Just needed the blade a little longer to get through all the layers, and there we go. This one took 6 cuts compared to the previous that took about 26. Now for the covers, you can do whatever you want. I want to cover mine. I have some old calendars that have some really beautiful pictures on. I'm going to recycle those. This one is from 2018. I think it's time I use this. I'm going to align the journal long ways and trim it exactly on the edge, the top and bottom edge of the journal, and then I'm going to fold in the sides. Let me show you what I mean. I've put down my journal onto my piece of calendar and I'm just marking off where it fits exactly for the journal. I'm then going to just slice this extra piece off. Do keep that, it'll make some great background for a collage. I'm going to do the same for the second one. The piece of calendar is going to fit exactly the journal from top to bottom. I'm only going to cover one of the catalog journals. The other one I have an idea for Christmas, so that one we will get back to for a future project. I'm going to do the same for this one. I have this beautiful sunflower picture from my calendar. You can see the journal fits exactly in the paper we've just cut. We now need to attach the calendar or the cover we're going to use onto our journal. I'm going to use double-sided tape. You can obviously use Mod Podge, glue, anything you like, or whatever you have handy. If you don't want to cover it in something, of course you can then just paint it or add collage. Just make it your own. So we've used a free magazine and a free catalog. The calendar papers I'm using are old and they were probably going to be thrown out anyway. We already have adhesive in our craft room, whether it be double-sided tape or any kind of glue. And the scissors and rulers we already have. So far, for me, everything is free. In other words, we didn't have to go out and buy anything specific to make this art journal. I position my journal in the cover and then press it down firmly. I'm going to do the same with the double-sided tape for the back cover. And now for the 2 pieces that are overhanging on the sides, what I'm going to do, I'm going to tuck those in. I'm first going to glue the 2 pages together. This will thicken it also and make the cover a bit firmer. And then I'm going to fold over the excess and glue that down. Of course, you could cut it off if you want. I want to fold mine over. And I've just used glue stick for this. Repeat on the other side. I then want to put something on my inside covers. So I found a nice scrapbook paper that is quite fun. I'm just going to measure very roughly. I'm not using a ruler to measure. I'm just eyeballing this. I want it slightly smaller than the inside cover. So I've just measured that. I'm going to cut it down to size. I'm going to cut 2 and I'm going to stick them on the inside of my front and back cover. I was quite liking this pink on the other side too, and I was trying to decide if I should use that or use the spots. I eventually went with the spots. I'm going to use glue stick to stick these down, and I will probably decorate them at a later stage. I'm going to do the same for the other 2 magazine journals. And because the process is exactly the same, I'm going to skip a bit forward. The cover is attached, and I'm going to use this beautiful green spotty paper for the inner covers of this journal. This is actually a great way to use up scrap papers if you have any bits that are big enough to use on the inside, but not big enough for any other kind of project. Of course, they don't need to be matching like mine. They can be different. I repeat the process for journal number 3. And then depending what you're planning to use your journal for, you could use it for an art journal, it could be a glue book, a scrapbook, and that depends on how you prepare the pages. I'm going to use mine for an art journal. So what I want to do is actually stick all the pages together. So there where I had folded it over, I'm going to stick each flap down. I'm using glue stick for this. And this is also good obviously because it makes the page thicker. I will leave the other 2 and glue those when I'm about to use them. I'm going to do just some simple embellishment for the cover. I found some color coordinating cardstock and I'm just going to do some layering. Another good scrap busting opportunity. I'm not going to make it too busy. I'm going to keep it quite simple. I have my background striped paper. I have my orange die cut flower, and then I have a little sentiment in black that I'm going to add just for a little bit of additional interest so I can have my little sentiment pop. I've torn a piece of book page and put that sort of above the stripes, and that'll frame my little sentiment. With a black fine liner pen, I'm going to go around my sentiment just to give it some more pop. For the next one, I am inspired by the orange that is showing through a little bit on the picture that I've used. So I'm going to use this dark orange and I'm going to cut 4 strips. I'm going to make a frame of sorts. A really simple one too. The strips are roughly 1 centimeter wide and I'm going to have 2 long ones and 2 shorter ones. It's going to be a long rectangular frame. Having a quick look to see what I could possibly put inside the frame. I'm then going to add a little bit of glue stick in the corners of each of the strips just to attach them and to keep the little strips in place. And then I'm going to use my sewing machine to sew around this to keep everything together. I'm using black thread and a regular running stitch, and I'm going to go around twice, and I am going to leave the other threads hanging down. If you don't have a sewing machine, that's fine, you can leave that step out. I really like this flower, but I feel the leaves are too much, so I'm just going to fussy cut the flower part. I want to embellish the frame, so I'm using a piece of that striped cardstock and a piece of book page, and then I'm going to add it at the bottom, and I'm going to crumple up that remaining thread to make it like bunched underneath. This adds great texture and interest. The orange flower will go on the right, and then again I have a black sentiment. But to start, let's glue down the frame, which is our starting point. I'm using craft glue for this because there's thread underneath. It'll need something a little bit sturdier and stronger than glue stick to stick it down. And for this last one, I'm inspired by the blue design that's at the bottom of the picture of the sunflower. And I'm going to use this piece of blue cardstock. I want to make a very simple sort of like label style for this one to house my sentiment. I've cut the blue strip of cardstock and I want to add a few layers to it just to make it more interesting. I'm going to stick the blue rectangle on some book page, and I'm going to do it at an angle. This is just to allow for the writing to show all the way around. If you stick it sort of in line with the words, somewhere on the top or the bottom there's going to be some blank. And I want the black and white writing sort of all the way around, so I do it at an angle. And I've trimmed the book page to add like a frame around the blue piece. I need one more layer and I need something bright. I eventually do find this beautiful yellow handmade style paper and I'm going to use that. I'm going to cut a piece slightly smaller than the blue, and this is what my sentiment is going to be stuck on. To add a bit of contrast, I'm going around the edge of the label with a black marker, sort of just to frame it. I was inspired by the gold focal point of my other cover. I'm adding a small amount of gold leaf that'll peep through underneath my label. I really hope you enjoyed this video and were inspired to create your own free journal using magazines. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the little bell so you're notified every time I upload new content. Thanks again for watching, happy creating, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.